Charlotte is a key leader and a co-founder at Row 7 Seeds, which is really kind of the vision of the chef Dan Barber, author of The Third Plate. Dan came to Berkeley a couple of years ago and gave a very impressive presentation about his vision. And now it's really wonderful to have Charlotte at the helm, implementing that vision with Row 7 and playing a role at the level of seed in the future of agriculture. So without further ado, it's a pleasure to introduce you to Charlotte Douglas.
Well, thank you, Will, and thank you everyone for having me. I thought I would begin with a little bit of show and tell and with the story of a squash. This is the coconut squash, which, as squash go, is still in its infancy. It was developed by Michael Mazourek, who is an organic vegetable breeder at Cornell and also a co-founder of Row 7 alongside of Dan Barber of Blue Hill. So our company brings chefs and plant breeders and farmers together to develop new varieties of vegetables for flavor and for organic systems. And then we sell those varieties as seeds that are 100% organic and unpatented and produced in the US. And the coconut is one of them. And again, this was a variety that was developed by Michael at Cornell and trialed in the field and in the kitchen. And when you speak to Michael about the squash, he takes on this glow of a proud parent. I think of all of his vegetable creations, this is the one that he is most excited about. And if you taste it, you immediately understand why. It is absolutely delicious. It's the cross between two market types. So you have the flavor and the sweetness of the best butternut squash married with the dry matter and the velvety texture of a kabocha-like pumpkin. It is nutrient dense. It yields well in organic systems. It actually has this natural ripeness indicator. So squash turn from green into this bronze color exactly when they're ripe and ready to pick. It has great storage. I think you get it, right? All of the stars aligned for this squash, as they rarely do in plant breeding. But if you were to ask Michael 10 years ago for a prediction about the fate of the squash in the marketplace, he would tell you that it was almost certainly doomed to fail. So why is that, right? Why is there a variety that is delicious and distinctive and nutritious and one that can add value for organic farmers? Why would that possibly be doomed to fail? And the answer is that before there was a coconut in the market, there was nothing quite like a coconut in the market. There was no SKU for this, which it turns out is one of many barriers to entry for new plant diversity and innovation. We have spent nearly a decade speaking to plant breeders, public and private, across the country. And what has presented itself over and over again is this very disconnected system where you have, on the one hand, the energy and the excitement of the farm to table movement, and on the other, a global seed industry that is rapidly consolidating, and a community of plant breeders who are by mandate still often in service to a commodity system. So as you may know, plant breeders have access to incredible diversity as they are working and the potential to select for whatever we ask them to, but more often than not, they are asked to make improvements within a very rigid system of market commodity standards. So plant breeders and squash breeders, for instance, they're being asked to build a more efficient version of this rather than encouraged to explore new opportunities for innovation. This seed system is also a system that is driven by chemical inputs, as we know. Today, there are 4 multinational companies that control 60% of the world's seed sales. And those 4 companies are all chemical companies. They also control 60% of the world pesticide sales. So organic plant breeding and R&D has received a tiny fraction of the investment. And if you're breeding within a system of chemical inputs, it means, by definition, you're not breeding for varieties that are going to succeed and thrive in organic systems. So I say that all as kind of a framework and to sort of share with you the foundational problem that we were trying to address when we launched Row 7 in 2018 as one answer to this system. And the question was, how do you support the development and the distribution of a crop like this, of diversity that serves eaters and growers and supports plant breeders and seed keepers? And that has required for us taking a kind of ecosystem approach to the business. So Row 7 was founded on this idea of connecting plant breeders, the people who are writing the recipes for our food, with the end users and consumers, so farmers and chefs and eaters. And in doing so, trying to seek out varieties that bring unique culinary value, unique ecological value, unique nutritional value, rather than a standard commodity experience to consumers. So over the past 3 years, we've built up this network of about 150 partnering chefs and farmers who participate in variety trials. So they are testing and exploring varieties that are still in development and co-selecting in the field and kitchen. And then as we have grown, we've also broadened that community to other stakeholders, like retailers and CPG companies, to participate in this process and, more importantly, to try to bring scale and access to these ingredients and to these ideas. So in the first year of the coconut squash's release, we partnered with Sweetgreen to introduce the coconut to all of its stores. And then last year, there was an organic family food company, Once Upon a Farm, which you may know, which created a baby food featuring the coconut squash. And again, this is an ingredient that in many breeders' programs would have been discarded for lack of market demand. I wanted to give one more example, which is even more nascent, but I think speaks to the possibilities when it comes to innovation in regenerative agriculture. And I'm excited about this because I actually shared this project, or I mentioned it when I was in Berkeley a couple of years ago in Will's class. And then we received the first shipment of it just this past week. And that is this, which is a little more difficult to see, but this is barley. And barley is often mentioned as a valuable crop for regenerative agriculture, and for good reason, right? It produces abundant biomass and thick root systems, so it supports a healthy soil structure. It helps with weed suppression and erosion control. So we know that more people should be growing barley in their rotations, which means that we need to get more people to eat barley. And that is good news because this is coming at a time when we recognize the role that whole grains play in our health. So if you are an entrepreneur, you're probably thinking, okay, what is a product that I can create that incorporates barley and that maybe helps with some of this market pull through? And that's where you get to the problem, which is that almost all of the barley that we eat today is not actually intended to be eaten by us. Almost all of modern barley is bred for one of two purposes. It is bred for animal feed, or it is bred for the malting industry. We do not eat barley that is developed with culinary value in mind, and that has happened at the expense of flavor and nutrition in this grain. I should also mention that we don't eat barley that was intended for organic systems. So again, you're kind of getting at the heart of how can we support a regenerative organic system with a commodity and kind of chemically bred crop. So this, which I showed you earlier, is one exception to that. This is a barley that was developed for organic systems with no chemical inputs. And it's a hulless barley that was meant to be eaten. This variety has double the beta glucan of your average barley. So that means more soluble fiber to help with heart health. And it is absolutely delicious. So when we start with the seed and we begin on that level, that's when we can begin to add back culinary and nutritional value to what has become a commodity grain, but also in the process open up new opportunities and markets for this crop.
That's so exciting, Charlotte. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I mean, a lot of credit goes to the breeder of this, who is at Washington State, right. And also a lot of the diversity that he was building on, of course. But it is really exciting. And I will end just by saying that I think that kind of encapsulates the challenge for us, which is as we think about regenerative agriculture and the ways of eating and of growing that are going to sustain us into the future, and also the business opportunities to meet those demands, I think we have to think about and invest in the types of seeds and also the seed keepers who support that system. And that has never been more urgent. So I hope that that is something that you can all stake a claim in as you move forward in this work.
How would you suggest we do that? I mean, we can grow this in our backyard. We can ask for it from our favorite food producers. What other suggestions? How do we activate the appreciation for this approach and these products?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I was thinking just the other day how consumers have developed such a language and such a sort of set of questions around their food choices, and they've learned how to ask for not only what is local or what is organic or non-GMO, but we've kind of developed a criteria around our food choices that I think we have an opportunity to extend to our seed. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a row 7 seed, but yeah, how do we think about, were my seeds grown organically? You know, what were they bred for? Were they bred for an organic system? Where were they produced? You could think about your seed shed in the same way that you think about a food shed. And I think building up that, I guess, that literacy around the importance of seeds and plant breeders and also seed keepers around the world in sustaining our food system and supporting the kind of food system we want for the future is so important.
I love that, seed literacy. You know, this is a whole complementary topic from what Ricardo was just talking about, which was going into the lab and trying to replicate things that we're already familiar with, maybe from the animal kingdom, but from the plant kingdom. Well, one of the things I think that's so fascinating about row 7 is that it comes out of an innovation ecosystem. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, the fact that, you know, Dan, situated with his culinary leadership on the farm at Stone Barns in the Hudson Valley, with Cornell University being a couple hours to the north, with people like Michael, who are world-class seed breeders, and then other university partners. Can you talk a little bit about how all of those components sort of come together in this dance to generate these innovations? And then your role, of course, to help bring them to market and create the language of seed literacy for all of us to embrace.
Yeah, no, it is a massive effort in community organizing. So a lot of the work did take root at Blue Hill and where I was before row 7 was officially row 7, and these conversations that began with Michael Mazourek and with other plant breeders, and having the opportunity to kind of participate in their variety selection process, I think just opened up an awareness around what is possible if you do have a stake in that process, and if you are participating and prioritizing flavor and nutrition early on. So when row 7 came into the world, it was with the idea of, how do we, first of all, make this successful outside of the walls of Blue Hill, but then also how do we replicate this kind of model where you have chefs and farmers and plant breeders in conversation and kind of participating in a feedback loop. So we now work with about 50 plant breeders around the country, all of whom have expertise in different, types of crops and different regions. And then again, we have this network of about 150 chefs and farmers who are operating in tandem. So we will have a partner chef and farm. So we are sending out seeds and sometimes produce of experimental material at the beginning of the season that is being planted in the farmers' fields. They're sharing their feedback from the field and then passing produce on to the kitchen of the chefs. So they're sharing more on their culinary observations. And it's a community that's grown quite a bit. It's also one, as I said, where we're starting to bring in other types of stakeholders into that process. But that
it's really a community of innovation. It's fascinating, and it takes longer than writing code or, it's a long-term commitment, right? And Jackie Mendelson in our audience here wants to know what's the policy innovation or companion to your, in your community? What should we be doing there to accelerate and amplify the work that you're leading?
Yeah, I can think of a couple of things. I mean, one, I mentioned the kind of investment in organic R&D. I think that is a huge issue. And unfortunately, it's one where we're beginning to see the needle move a little bit towards, again, trying to support the development of varieties that actually, thrive and perform well in organic systems, because there's an opportunity to really also kind of close the gap on yields, close the gap on accessibility and price point for organic products, and again, just on the whole, support the kind of food system that we want to move toward. And then I would also say that patents is a huge issue that many of you may know this, but a lot of the varieties, or many varieties since about the 1980s, have been developed with a utility patent, which means that growers can't save seed of those varieties and researchers can't use those varieties for research. So it's really kind of closing the door for evolution and planting a stake in seeds in a way that really doesn't acknowledge the whole arc of that seed's evolution. So
we really have great opportunities for our law students and our public policy students and the students that are going to want to go work in the USDA and or outside of it and advocate for more funding for organic ecosystem agriculture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Charlotte, what a pleasure to see you. I'm so glad about the barley. And for the people that don't know, the barley also turns into these extraordinary meals that chefs are now making, and breads, right? Aren't there some really spectacular bread innovation going on?
Yeah. I hope that you will all have a chance to taste it soon. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're going to keep inviting you, Charlotte, as long as you're generously sharing. We love keeping track of the progress of Row 7. And as you know, once Upon a Farm was co-founded by one of our alums, John Foraker, and the Sweet Green team is good friends of ours. So let's just keep growing the community to get this agricultural system really embraced at a greater scale.